sì, di una regista di Galizia, bellissima, Oporno, è proprio bella quel film.
Hola, muy buenas.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for being here for this second session in our Films by Women Festival in Madrid. We are going to have a panel now. A very necessary one, in my opinion, a very important one. We're going to talk about the results of all gender funding aids in Spain and Europe in the audiovisual industry. We thought about this panel because we have some background already to analyze, to assess what has been happening with these funds, with these shares, with these regulations, trying to accelerate the incorporation, the full incorporation of women to the audiovisual industry in Europe and also in Spain. For this assessment, for this evaluation, we have some of the main actors of these regulations, these policies, and also some of the representatives of these policies in Europe. I'll introduce them. We have Alexia Muiños, Director of Programs in the European Women's Audiovisual Network in Spain. He's from Galicia, like me. I'm sorry, I can't help myself. Then we have Beatriz Navas, General Director of the ICAA, who's been fighting for implementing these policies, these measures in Spain. We are really interested in hearing her opinion. I'm sure she has some figures that she can tell us about. Then we have Enrico Vannucci, Executive Director and responsible of strategies and inclusion in Eurimages in Belgium. And then we have Maxa Zoller, the Artistic Director of the Frauen Film Festival in Germany. Well, she can correct me if I'm sure I mispronounced it, but it's a pleasure, a luxury to have you here. And I'm sorry, we have our great moderator, Cristina Andreu, President of CIMA, Women in... no, sorry, that's MAP, CIMA. Yes, the Association of Women in the Audiovisual Industry and Filmmakers in Spain. Yes, sorry. So I think it's a very necessary panel that we have here today. So we can't wait to hear about these results. And I want to remind Anna Serner's words from the Institute of Audiovisual in Sweden. I think she's a clear representative of the sector, and she used to say that the only thing we need to do is add up. And that's, well, if we add, well, figures show the result. So we need to see if indicators prove her right. Well, good afternoon. will start with Beatriz Navas. I'm really happy to be with her again, sharing a dialogue with. Well, we've shared so many during the last few years. Beatriz has been the director of Institute of Audiovisual Industry, ICAA, here in Spain until June 2023, since the year 2018. And I think you all know that this is a body that from or within the culture ministry, working in the audiovisual industry. And I have to say that thanks to Beatriz in Spain, right now, Spain is right now the country with the highest shares for women in the in filmmaking, and not only for filmmakers, for directors and screenwriters, but also for other parts of the creative teams. We've worked a lot together with ICAA, because we would like to have 50-50 shares by 2025. And I think that Beatriz is the perfect person to tell us a little bit about what has been done, what you did. We only need for the Cinema Act to be passed, and I think we will be the country with more women, more female filmmakers, and women making movies. Well, as she was saying, I'm not the only one who has worked for these. I must say that when we are working from the audience, from the public administration, there's a framework that has to be the base to approve some measures, and we can't forget that the International Conference in UNESCO in 2005 approved the protection of diversity in cultural expressions, and Spain ratified that in 2007. So the policies that we need to develop from the ministry need to take this into account. We need to look for that, to search that diversity, and that diversity is related to the people producing all these pieces, all these works. And we could see that the figures did not support this role of women creating, developing projects in the audiovisual industry. And to be able to comply with this UNESCO objective or goal to have a more diverse culture and support women, sometimes to develop those policies you need to back them up with figures. And I think that add up that you were saying has to do with having a balance. And once you start assessing the figures, you see all the dramas that are there. So I think that one first step in ICAA was from the year 2005 we started collaborating with CIMA, so they could carry out some surveys with figures. And from the year 2015, CIMA provided us with the figures, and those are the figures that support the policies. In that first report, the presence of women in the film industry in Spain. Then in the year 2016 we changed the title a little, representation of women in the sector, and then from the year 2019 is representation of women in films, in long films, because it's true that the figures were figures about long films, about films, not short films or any other productions. I'm going to give you some figures, but it's true that they are all included in the reports. They are very visual, and well, where can you start? Sometimes you feel blocked at the beginning, so we thought we had to begin somehow. So we decided that we were going to start focusing on movies, on films that were considered by the Academy for being nominees for the Goya Awards. That was our first source for the movies that we were going to analyze within the different categories that we have. And on that first round, that first report that we had in 2015, what we saw was that the representation of women was in some of the main roles. We had 26% of women against 74% of male professionals. And we understand that there are more male professionals of overrepresentation with these percentages. So it was a clear case. But we need to bear in mind that in some of these positions, there are more women. For example, makeup or costume departments. So if we take these positions out to do the analysis, it's even worse. And in that case, for example, in filmmaking, directors, from 26 we moved to 19. In script writing, 12% of women. And, well, the most serious case, music composing or sound editing, more technical professions, it dropped to 7% of women in the industry. So it's already a starting point, something that justifies the problem we have with the structure in the industry. It shows how we need to start working on this. And what was our reaction? From the year 2015, we started having some aids for projects that had women as filmmakers or women in charge of script writing, screenplay, or projects that were led by women. They were going to get additional points in the score. So that was one first strategy. Those points, that score, that projects could get for those funds. But then in 2016 and 2017, when we saw that we were not progressing so much, it's true that with those aids, sometimes the result, you can see it only a couple of years afterwards. From the year 2018, those shares started going up a little. And we saw that there were many projects that were co-directed, cinematographer, it's true that public funds are very important, so projects would look for just anything that they can use to get those additional points, those additional scores. So we saw that that's not what we were aiming at. We wanted women to be more present in the industry, so we increased the number of points that that projects were getting. So it was 3 points when the movie was directed by a woman, and then also with a screenplay, and like that with all the different positions and movies that had women in the creative team. But we saw that still there were many projects with those co-directors or co-cinematographers, co-productions. So we decided to implement some other strategies. That representation needed to be exclusively women, except for the screenplay. Because it's true that the screenplaying profession is usually a collaboration process. It's usually more like a team. So in that case, it was an exception. But the rest of the positions needed to be with an exclusively female representation. So to get those points, if you had 40%, we started giving 3 points and we moved to 8 points. That was quite an improvement. And additionally, we created 2 other measures, which are the ones that are changing the situation. A share, 35% of the budget of ICAA is going to be for projects led by women. At the beginning, I must say that at the beginning we used to say, well, the 6 first projects, right? Well, in CIMA, they were very assertive with these. We said, well, we have to take a step forward, and it's true that when you are working with public funds, they tell you, well, the important thing is the talent, but then you see that some of the points that you get in these applications are automatic. They are not really related to the project itself. So sometimes 75% of the points are not related to the quality of the project, but to some other aspects. And in the system we have in Spain, we need an objective system to assign those points. So we assign 35% of the budget to projects by women, and additionally we changed something else. I don't know if you know that we have a law for these aids. Then we have a royal decree, and in that royal decree it explains that the public aids that a project can get, and according to Europe legal framework, in the audiovisual sector, well, it is a sector that we need to support because of its relevance. So we have another country that is also influencing through stories, and so we need to support this sector. It's a cultural sector, and we can assign up to 50% of the projects. But for those projects that have some difficulties, countries may decide to increase those aids. For example, for those projects or works by new artists, well, it's more difficult for them, right? They don't have already a background and some previous works to get funding. Or movies, films in minority languages, for example. That's what we did from Spain. Through all those figures and data, we showed how there was a problem to produce projects led by women. So we approved that measure. And also in the law, they explain about different tax reductions or benefits. So we moved that from 50% to 75%, and those are the 3 measures that I think that have been really a revolution in the sector. And then those measures are focused in the production aspect of the process, but we realized that we also needed to influence the distribution of movies, so we could have a more diverse offer of movies made by women in festivals, for example. Also to promote these movies filmed by women to be present in festivals. I'm sorry, I'm maybe this is getting too long, I'm sorry, but so we started with the production part of the process, but then we realized that maybe we had to tackle more challenges. So for example, conciliation, also people working in the different institutions, the different actors in the sector, and all the professionals working in the industry. So just some figures so you can see the progress from 2015, and the report in 2022 is we went from we got a 10% increase to 37% of female representation. So it's 10 more points. We saw that even in sound effects, so audiovisual effects. So if you compare the Goya nominees in 2015 and the Goya nominees in 2022, 2023, we have female cinematographers, female editors, animation short films, for example. There were no animation short films directed by women. Now this year, out of 5 animation short films, 4 of them are directed by women. Soundtrack composition in 2022, the Goya was awarded to a female team, so it's pretty impressive. Also this year with the nominees, we don't know the winners yet, but so you can see those figures in the report and also in this award ceremony. And well, we always say that even in Spain, since we have this gender-based aids, we have women receiving awards in international festivals, but also men, because women being present is not only relevant for themselves, also Spain is getting a higher representation of men. I mean, the level goes up with this representation of women in the industry. Thank you very much, Beatriz, because what they've always told us is that talent is the important thing. Well, and if we are talking about shares, well, then how can we know whether talent is there or not? Now I'm going to give the floor to Maxa. This is going to be a little bit different because we're not talking about figures now, but about festivals. She's the artistic director of one of the most important and oldest film festivals in the industry. And I read that she's very interested in the post-colonial identity, post-feminism. And I'm going to pose a question. Women festivals, are they necessary? Maxa?
Sorry, am I loud? Can you hear me? No, I think that's the good.
It's on your back. On your back.
Sorry, I'm a bit like an avatar, you know, when you have this thing, you can't move. What I do? I do this?
Yeah, well, attending this one, you can take whether you want to use this one.
I do whatever you want me to do.
La emoción es directa.
I don't know. I know, I've got too much hair. I want you to remove your right earring, which I put on especially for you tonight. Yeah, I had to remove it. Just joking. Okay. Yeah, good. Okay. So, first of all, I'm going to answer that question in a minute, but to you, it now all makes sense. I get it now, why we get so many amazing films from Spain. Yes, I get it now. Duh. Yes, I mean, guys, you're still young in the audience. You don't know what you have here. You have a jewel. This is, maybe I only know Anna Segers from Swedish Institute, but it's something like that in the world. I mean, wow, I have to say, I'm really honored to be sitting next to you. I mean, first of all, we gave our international feature film prize to a Spanish director, Pilar Palomero, for motherhood. Plus, we are receiving a lot of amazing Spanish films, and we just hear about the Spanish film industry a lot. Thanks to you, I get it now. And also, I have to say, you see, that's the... Am I too loud? No? Okay. That's the really good point about a centralist film industry that you seem to have here, like in other countries, like the Britain, where you have BFI, on Sweden, you have the Swedish Institute. You have one big entity that decides, okay? You've got a bad guy there, things go bad. You've got a good woman there, things go brilliantly, okay? So you've got the chance of change, as you can see here, okay? Now, the thing in Germany is, because we had the Second World War, Okay, Germany has been decentralized. We don't have one centralist institution, one person that decides. Okay, you get what I mean? Because of the fascist history. Yeah, you are nodding, but the kids in the back, they don't even know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. So, you see, so Germany has been centralized and all the different counties get a say. So it's been really mind-blowing and nerve-wracking to get any kind of change going, because it goes from county to county, back to Berlin, back to the county. See, we are struggling for years, and then, people are changing positions. It's a really slow, turtle-like dinosaur that I'm talking about, the German film industry. And things don't go that fast, like in centralist countries. So that's just my little, homage to what just been said. The question of why are women film festivals still necessary today is a question that I get every year from the German press, and when I get asked for interviews, I just tell them straight away, don't ask me that question. I don't want that question. But because it comes from you, I will answer it. Well, let's just look at the world, and what do we see? We see women's rights in action, or we don't see women's rights in action? I don't think I have to say what terrible, terrible times we are going through at the moment. If we're looking at the worldwide conflict, the very recent one in the Middle East, it's a male system that brought this brutality and this violence on us, and no, women's rights are not being heard. And the film festivals are one jigsaw puzzle in a bigger puzzle that's to do with legal systems, with human rights systems, with health systems. You see, we're just like a part of a big call for rights for women, and we happen to have one of the beautiful parts to do with beauty and art and screen, but we are part of a bigger global fight for women. So yes, as long as women's rights are not being implemented and heard, we do need film festivals, because that's where women come together. And in the ghetto, if you like, wonderful things can happen, because they're like incubators of a certain culture. And that for the first time in 30 years, 40, Cannes, Venice and Oscars are being given prizes to women directors. And that's because of decades of activist works, of different kinds of cultural workers, female cultural workers, including film festivals. So yes, we still have a long path ahead of us, but at the same time, thank God, we can see some fruits of the hard work.
Y para terminar,
and just to finish off, I had spoken to Maxa on the phone, but there is something that I believe is important. And this is the rescue of the Women Archive, and showing it, not just contemporary movies, but also looking at the benchmarks that we have. We're not just in the beginning of doing women cinema, women movie. There have been invisible women who have made movies in the past, and this deprived us of benchmarks, of points of reference. I think this is what Magda tries to do in her festival. I've discussed this with her. Correct me if I'm wrong, Magda, but I think you also want to know the reference of the women's perspectives, because we women do not all think the same way. We have different thinkings, and there is also a strong commitment with feminism that should be present in movies made by women. I don't know if I've explained myself well enough, Magda, if you could answer.
Archive is very important. We have a fantastic archive that we don't use enough, I have to say. If you go to Poninone, someone knows Poninone? the silent movie festival, yeah, it's full of white cis men in their 60s and 70s. It's unbelievable. And they are curating the festival as if nothing has happened, as if Me Too never happened, as if Black Lives Matter never happened. And at the same time, you know, it's a treasure hunt festival. We should not cancel it or anything, you know. We should go and support it. But at the same time, it shows you the way we've been brainwashed by the decades and decades of filtering out women work from the official archive. So the work is not done, and building up feminist archives is very important. And then the question comes, all right, do I want to go into the mainstream archive, or do you want to stay in opposition to the mainstream? It's always a dynamic struggle, you know. Sometimes it depends on personalities, you know. Some go with the mainstream and some stay outside and will never touch the mainstream, you know, and stay activist until the last day of their lives. But that's also the question of the archive. When you build up an archive, how radical do you keep it, or how much do you normalize it into the mainstream? Is this falling down again, or can you still hear me? Yeah, good. Okay.
Pues voy a seguir preguntando y luego.
Let me keep asking questions. I would like to ask Enrico Vannucci, who is the Executive Director of Eurimages, the Council of Europe Fund for Support to Culture. It includes 38 of the 47 member states of the organization, with headquarters in Strasbourg, also including Canada. Eurimages has a budget of approximately 27.5 million. And as part of the gender equality strategy, since 2022, the projects in which a woman filmmaker can participate can request a subsidy of 75% of the budget in all genres. My question is, first of all, did I explain myself correctly? Did I give the right data? And then secondly, are there any data about, in the subsidies provided, delivered by this institution, are there any data about the percentage of women and men?
Sure. First of all, I have to correct a few points. I apologize for doing it. I'm the Deputy Executive Director. The Director is a woman, so that may be a good news to you. So I'm just the Deputy Executive Director. And actually, member states of Eurimages are only 39, not 47. 47 used to be the Council of Europe, actually, because the Eurimages is a partial agreement within the framework of the Council of Europe. And we have 38 European states plus Canada. As you said, this is a very important point, because actually it was an opening of the fund over a different cinematography, and it was a very interesting development. With regard to gender equality issues, as mentioned, maybe I give some more details for people to understand what Eurimages is all about. Actually, we are top financer, so we only fund co-productions among films, projects which are co-produced by at least 2 producers established in 2 member states of ours. So our aim at the end of the day is to bring professionals from different countries to work together. This is the reason why in the late 1980s Eurimages was established in the first place. And we are top financer in the sense that, as someone mentioned in the previous roundtable, in order for producers to ask funds from us, they need to have ensured 50% of funding in each one of the countries of the co-production. Because from that point of view, we don't take much financial risk. You know, we really need to have projects which have been supported on a national level. Everything else you said is correct, and so from my point of view, it's clear the budget is very limited. So it's a selective process, the award of co-production support, and we keep receiving ever more projects, and the budget is not increasing accordingly. So the rate of success for application is going down. This is the combined effect of having ever more projects requesting funding and member states not increasing our budget. I think it's very important to mention that, that Eurimages is part of the Council of Europe, because I don't know if you know this organization, which is a pan-European organization, where gender equality has always been one of the main issues we have dealt with. Council of Europe deals with human rights, democracy, and rule of law. The Istanbul Convention, I don't know if anyone has ever heard about the Istanbul Convention, is a convention which was written and signed within the framework of the Council of Europe. We have a very advanced approach to gender equality issues within the organization and in our member states. This is the upside. And that led actually to Eurimages starting officially discussing these issues of gender equality well before the Me Too. Actually, in 2013, the first gender equality working group was established. This is the upside. And there are some results which have been achieved in this domain. And the downside is that being an international organization, we have this need to keep everyone on board. So we may not be able to go as quickly as some member states can do in their own country. I was listening with great interest to what happened in Spain. This is something we just cannot do. It was mentioned that a federal state like Germany is complicated. Bringing together 39 states from all over Europe, I think, is even more complicated. I'm not saying that it's not complicated in Germany, but for us it's very important to say that we need to keep everybody on board. And so that's why I think also the little results, maybe not so big, that we have achieved are very important. I would like to highlight, before getting to the figures, there are two things. Our first gender equality strategy for cinemas was started in 2014. We are now at the fourth strategy. And a point, which the previous speakers made me think of, it's also very important. Eurimages was instrumental in establishing a recommendation by the Committee of Ministers for gender equality in the audiovisual sector, to which there are some appendices, that describe very clearly how cast and crew could be actually measured in terms of gender equality. This is, I say, it's possibly people from the UNESCO came as observers to see what we were doing, because actually they never did anything specific to the audiovisual sector. As of today, it's the only legal instrument. Upside. The downside, it's a recommendation. It's not binding. So it's just, it's an invitation, it's a recommendation to member states to actually do something about it, to tell them how to do it, how to measure things. But of course, if national authorities are not willing to do that, they have no obligation whatsoever to do so. So this is always this twofold perspective you can have on our work. In terms of figures, we started measuring projects led by women directors. At the beginning that was our main interest, and I must say that if we look once again to the half full part of the glass, in the last 10 years we started measuring, in the very 2010s, when we started, women director receiving our funds. In 2012, they only received 7% of the funds paid out by Eurimages. 2022, the last year for which we have figures, because of course 2023 is not finished yet, it was 48%, from 7 to 48%. So money-wise, it was a major change. I mean, that's really something. And we managed to do that, just by awareness raising, discussing things. We had this advantage of actually, as I'm doing it here with people possibly better qualified than me, but we went out to member states, to the countries, speaking about these issues. And it was more or a kind of awareness raising exercise, meeting professionals from different countries, making speak up, and that was very, very, very useful. And we actually didn't have incentives, from that point of view. I can only mention two measures which were actually introduced so as to compensate. The fact that statistically we noticed that women asking support from us were actually asking for less money, for lower budgets.
Yes.
In order, this is one of the issues, everybody knows about it, but in order to actually make up for this issue, at the beginning, when we had a different way of awarding support, the decision was taken that in case of two projects making the same points, having the same ranking at the same level, then the female director would be receiving the funds. Other things being equal, the funds would be given to female directors. Now we have undergone a reform. Now it's external experts which we commission that actually take this decision. This rule has no room to be applied, because this is, they need to produce a ranking, and so there is no ex aequo, if you wish. So this is not going to be applied anymore. But there is another measure which has been introduced as from the beginning of 2022. This is a little bit technical, but from our point of view, it's quite relevant. Usually there are limits to the amount of money we can actually award to a single project. The limits being, on the one hand, we never give out more than 500,000 euros to a single project. We have a limited budget, we cannot afford paying millions for a single project. So we have this ceiling of €500,000 for a project. And then there is also an additional criterion, which is that we cannot actually fund more than 17% of an overall budget. So we only coming at the end, the project can only receive from us the top 17%, unless it's a documentary, which is 25%. And here the decision was taken actually to increase this percentage from 17 to 25 for projects of fiction. Of films directed by women. So that was once again acting in money-wise, and it's also linked always to this observation that actually women usually ask for less money. So that's why it's more a compensation from our point of view than an incentive. And for us this is important because discussions, in order to change these things, I insist we have to have 39 states on board, and 39 states which are Canada, which are Sweden, which are Turkey, which are Armenia, which are Greece, which are Italy, Germany, Spain. So it's very important. But by just doing this, with these little measures and making it known that actually we care very much about these issues, taking part in roundtables like this one, in others, carrying out studies, I think that things are changing and going in the good direction. This is the upside of our work. Then we have started measuring and saying female projects, not just look at the director, but also to see cast and crew. We have these figures. It's much more difficult for us to make use of these figures. So what we use them for is actually to speak about them. Okay, and that's because that's the core business of ours in this domain is awareness raising, and figures are fundamental because that's figures, if they're correct, are facts. Otherwise, opinions can be questioned. So from that point of view, both within our circle and outside, the point was to say we have this perception. Is that correct or not? And then we started measuring things, and that's actually why we think that figures and statistics are very important. And then it's very important to consistently apply them throughout the time, just to see how things are going. And from my point of view, all statistics are going in the good direction. The rate of improvement possibly is not always the best one. I indicated the best one because from 7 to 48% in terms of funding paid to women-led projects, it's really a huge result. In other things, notably for cast and crew, figures are not that interesting. But it's also clear, because you need to get a professional skill, you also need to. It takes time. It's not like paying out a support which we can do. If you have to have schools, you have to have careers, you have to. And something we are looking at also is to try and see to what extent, because I think that we are a very specific, very little niche within the audiovisual industry. This is something which needs to be kept in mind. We don't have powers to establish rules. As mentioned, we were very proud to have managed to get the Committee of Ministers to adopt a recommendation, which is not binding. But also, we need to make things evolve from a cultural point of view, not because we deal with culture, but because we have so many different people around the table each time we meet, that we need to go slowly and keep the group together. But I think, things have improved, and sometimes I'm a little bit, I'm told, you're too optimistic, but I think, I can, nowhere can I see a statistic going down. So from that point of view, then the rate sometimes is disappointing. I could mention, I was checking, the statistics mentioned for Spain with regard, for professions. I have these kind of things on our projects. But as mentioned, it's just art house films, co-productions, at least 2 member states from Europe. It's a very specific word we are looking at. We are not giving a perspective as Spain. It's a country. You have the whole market, any kind of film, we are just art house films, co-productions, mainly European. So we are a very specific niche.
Yo no lo había pensado, lo he pensado escuchándole los informes.
I hadn't thought about it. Looking at the CIMA reports, and that is why measures were taken, because it's a way of seeing the reality. Maybe we could make a report of the awards of the European Academy. Could perhaps Eurimages do that?
Many other entities. The point is that actually we look at our own projects which don't have many resources and much stuff to deal with. At the Council of Europe, I don't know if you know the observatory, or the European Observatory, or the Audiovisual Observatory. They're colleagues of ours who actually do the studying. We actually manage the funds. So it's a very different job. But we realize that, sometimes it's, whereas those people who study from a legal and from a market point of view provide materials which are absolutely fundamental to understand what's going on, and they can rely on member states who are not quite the same as Eurimages. Most of them are, but in some other instances they're not, and they also have the European Union as a member. But sometimes the fact that you hand out money gives some weight to what you say, although from a theoretical point of view, and we could never compete with our colleagues. They study, we assess projects, we hand out support, we sign contracts.
Yes.
We are a fund, and we don't have the means to actually go beyond what we are doing. But I think that we were among the first movers, certainly not Sweden, but not very many member states of Eurimages had any initiative before we started. Anna Serner, was the director of Sweden, and of course we shared the 2020, the 50-50 by 2020, which now I heard now someone saying 2025, because of course.
Bueno, como nosotras somos muy.
Since we are fighters, we will try to find the funds wherever, somewhere in Europe, so we can start developing these reports, because maybe with a survey where we can see what are the European cinematographers or music composers or all those things that we've done in Spain, maybe if we can send that to Eurimages, maybe with that you can increase the shares for some other professions, right? After hearing you, maybe I think we need to carry out that survey and have those figures. Thank you very much. And now I'm going to ask Alexia, the Director of Programs of the European Women's Audiovisual Network, through networking opportunities or research programs or different events. How you can promote a professional career for women so they can have acknowledgement in the European sector. First, I wanted to ask you, how many countries are there in the network? How many countries first I will thank the festival, Films by Women. It's a pleasure to be here at home. It's not so often that I get to talk in Spanish. It's a great advantage for me today. So I want to thank Beatriz because of the situation we have in Spain right now, having so many films made by women now, competing in the different awards, getting awards in Cannes, in Berlin. This is thanks to the hard work of ICAA for years. I hope all countries had their own Beatriz in a way. So I wanted to start by saying that. So the European Women's Audiovisual Network, I don't know how many countries are there in the network, more than in the Council of Europe, because even if the name is European Women's Audiovisual Network, filmmakers from Iran can be members as well. I mean, they have the difficulty of being in a country which makes it so difficult for her, right? So we open our doors to them as well. We have some members from Spain, from the south of the Mediterranean region. We have some in Asia, but well, most of the members are from the 50 European countries. We don't leave any out. It's funny that I'm here right next to Enrico. We've shared some other panels this year, and so they usually put us together, like Eurimages and European Women's Audiovisual Network. No, they give away a lot of funds, and we are a non-profit organization that was born years ago with the idea of promoting networking among women at a European level or at a global level, if possible. That was our initial dream. We started gathering and organizing events, but we've been able to recently launch very pioneering initiatives, like the first pan-European survey about filmmakers, female filmmakers, and it's being used. It's being quoted and used as a reference in many places now. So and even the report that the Audiovisual Observatory has published today, it was published today, and that survey is about all the movies that are premiered in Europe, not only the candidates to the awards. So with the data from 2018 to 2022, we have 26% of women filmmakers in the European film industry. We also assess producers, screenwriters, cinematographers, and actresses as well, and soundtrack composers. So our key findings have been published today. And we see how, for example, when we have a comparison between the different countries, and thanks to the great work of ICAA, in Spain we went from 15% of movies to 21% of films directed by women. 2018, 2022. These are the figures we have. And even like these, we're still a little bit below the average in Europe, where we see Iceland with 37% of women filmmakers. I wanted to ask you something else. Well, I wanted to say that I believe I'm here as a moderator, but I'm also the president of CIMA, right? So we realized that if the legislation doesn't change, there's not much we can do. I mean, recommendations are okay for the UN, but they are useless, right? So what I want to say with these is that, well, are you thinking about fighting at a political level? I mean, changing the regulations, because last year we were proposing the audiovisual communication law. It's a European piece of legislation, but the member states could propose amendments for that law. And we have been the only country that, well, fighting a lot. We had 70% of the platforms and mainstream TV channels that they need to invest in in films. Only a little percentage needs to be for projects led by women. So I used to wonder, I called my colleagues in other countries in Europe and I told them, you could have changed this piece of legislation, and they didn't even have the information. So I don't know, since you are so many members, do you think think that maybe you could try to make an effort and try to influence in policies? Well, we are many, many members in the network, but us working there as a team, we're not that many. We're just a few. We were actually in 2015. We were in Sarajevo, where we proposed some amendments encouraging the countries in Europe to try and implement the measures for gender equality. We Festival of Venice, for example, we told them when they didn't include any women in their candidates, and we've been one of the few entities developing programs funded by Creative Europe, mentoring programs for emerging filming producers, for example. Always when we have the chance, we do it. We've addressed the European Commission about the problem of gender equality with funds, the difficult access for films made by women to these resources. But right now our objective is to organize these activities for networking, not just for networking. Probably here within the audience we have some producers willing to work in the series industry. Well, for example, the MIA market was launched some weeks ago. Series Accelerator. It was a program with the support and sponsored by Netflix. And it's supposed to be helping women producers in the series industry. It's 3 workshops and with some funds for carrying out the projects. And it's a program focused in the profile of the content and also the business aspects. What's the difference in working in a series that maybe it's going to be included in a platform or by a TV broadcaster, from the funding perspective. So from Monday it will be ready. You will have it available on our website, www.ewa.com, and you can send your applications for this series accelerator for female producers. So we have this kind of activities. We organize this kind of activities. We've also worked a lot for raising awareness about these, because we are also asked, do we really need to have a European women's audiovisual network? Because now there are so many movies directed by women, just like what Maxa was saying, right? Well, it is necessary. Yes, we still need that, because it's a safe space for us to talk, to find possible partners for our projects. It's a space for sharing our knowledge. We actually are growing. We are more and more members, and the events we organize in Cannes, in Berlin, in the festivals, they are successful. So it is a great space for that exchange of ideas, so we all get to know what's going on in other countries. Thank you very much, Alexia. Well, now, yes, because, we were supposed to finish at 9:15, but we still have time, yes. So just a couple of reflections. First, what Beatriz said before, I thought it was interesting. When suddenly women are getting awards, there are also male professionals getting those same awards. So how can we make men see that if there are more films made by women, it's going to be better for them as well, because they will have that female perspective. They will learn how to understand us women they won't have to be those men that we see in the audiovisual who are strong, they don't cry, they can do just anything. So many of them, they are together with us in our fight, but they need to see that we are not their enemy. We just want a more fair society, and that's something we need to get together. We need to work for that together, men and women, right? I don't know. That would be my question. How do you think we can do that? And then something that is also always a concern, the budget for films by women, it's always smaller, no? What you said. We should think that maybe female don't just need to tell women's stories, right? They can just tell all kinds of stories. They can do all kinds of movies, Western film, musical, I don't know, just anything, right? And then, well, you can talk about these. I'm just like suggesting these topics. Well, maybe if we go in the same order, it's interesting to talk about European films, but I think that Barbie, the fact that we had such a blockbuster directed by a woman, getting like this in the mainstream industry, right? When we have a good budget, we get to the mainstream audience as well, to a global audience. When we know how to pick a topic and give it a spin, like in this case with this movie, I think it's interesting. And I think this shows how there can be a change in what you were saying, how as women we can do other kinds of movies as well. The fact that we increased this age to 75% in the case of Spain, for example, those movies that were like those pre-ordered movies, because some movies are, well, there's a director that wants to tell a story and they make a film, but sometimes, well, it can be a movie that they ask you to do by a production company, for example, and that used to be something that male directors would do, but now there are female directors doing this or leading these kind of projects as well. So, well, and besides, if we have the audiovisual law and we have these shares that we have to comply with, so I think that these measures are working, and I think that in very shortly we'll see more females directing this other kinds of movies, like terror movies, for example, or movies in festivals. The festivals have their own audience, and they are also including this female industry. So I think that's already progressing. That's already working in the different genders, and that's linked to the budgets. And we still see in Spain a big difference between projects directed by men and women. And how can we incorporate men to this fight? Well, I think we also have to allow them to participate in letting us know what are their concerns. For example, someone told me once, well, with these measures, there are some men that maybe are going to direct their second or third movie and they cannot. Well, so maybe we can work in guaranteeing that these aids can also go there, right? We also need to listen to their concerns and work together, because maybe we can have measures that there's, for example, a measure in Portugal. If they need to guarantee aids for new filmmakers that are filming their second or third movie, or like to guarantee a long career in film professionals, both for men and women. So I think that we'll ask them to listen to us, but I think that as a part of that, we also need to listen to them, to their concerns.
Esa diversidad les beneficia.
And then we see how that diversity is a benefit for all of us, for for both men and women, right? Because it will make us stronger and we will be able to ask for more funds. So more women can mean more resources, more funds, and well, then also trying to listen and find out what are the real problems and real concerns. Thank you very much. Maxa?
First of all, I feel like, at least in Germany, we are in the massive generational shift, and that maybe answers to your question about how do we get men convinced that working with women will also benefit them. I think the new generation doesn't need to be convinced, or at least a large part of it, but I can also feel the battle and the in-house fighting of these generations, young women and men against the older generation. Maybe it's particularly strong in Germany because of its history, because we had the same party rulers for 20 odd years, so the roots and the traditions are very ingrained and very deep, and the struggle is very strong, I would say. That's why we also move kind of slowly. But I would like to talk to you later about this audiovisual law, because I agree that yes, creating and raising awareness is important, but laws at the end of the day are going to change the game. And also we're living times of backlash, you see, so as soon as women come to the forefront, we also have a very conservative backlash that can take away our rights again and change laws again. So we really have to be very, very careful here. I think one of the symptoms of this is that in Germany we never seem to be able to surpass the 30%. Somehow we're always these 30%. There's always like 30% women, but we don't get over it, whatever it is. Yeah, maybe in script writing and directing in certain parts of television it's better. We're reaching the 45s, 47s, but then sound and camera is 10 or under 10%. So I feel like the powers at play give us so much, and when we want more, it gets really hard and the fight gets really nasty. Not to say that I enjoy the fight. Yeah. I'm more like, okay, bring it on. But it can be a bit nasty, I have to say. So that's what I was going to say. Talk about the backlash and the generational shift, and also say something about diversity. The way you use it, obviously, in relation to women. I feel sometimes the way it's being used at festivals is to sidetrack the issues of women. And when I say women, actually I mean care workers. You see, that's, for me, it's not so much about my identity, it's about the fact that we care for our families and our children. You know, men can also be care workers, you know, they can have elderly parents, but you know, it's the work of the care work within capitalist society that still is exploited, yet supports the entire capitalist system. And so when we talk about diversity and identity, sometimes I want to be very careful so that we don't get sidetracked and gaslit, you know, in relation to the real problem that is capitalist exploitation.
Una cosa con esto que has dicho, bueno, de la conciliación.
And what you were saying about conciliation, about that balance between personal life and work. We have nurseries in the Cannes Film Festival, in the San Sebastián Film Festival, and the one in Valladolid. Also for the audience in the Seminci in Valladolid. Also for the audience going to the movie theaters for the festival. I think it's a way to have this conciliation. This that would be great if we had that at shootings as well, when making a movie.
As child guarding children, nurseries, and there's none in Germany. My festival has one now, and it's slowly being established. I talk about it a lot because if people want to, I'm not someone I want to do things. Yeah, I want to change things and see the change. So when people ask me what can we do, I say, just rent a seminar room, get a couple of toys, a couple of paint, and one or two people. It's not a lot of money. It can be done easily. Each festival should have that, but it doesn't help if Berlinale has been reluctant with these things. They're changing the director now. Okay, let's see what comes next. but they have been reluctant in really implementing these things when there could be such, pioneers of this work. So, yeah, it's so simple. So it just needs to be done.
Yes, done.
Enrico, our man in the panel. What do you think about what I'm suggesting, or I don't know if you want to talk about something completely different?
Like to develop on your points with regard to having men involved. I completely agree. I think that's also. I'm oftentimes the only man on the panel. I love it, but I think it's also interesting, to share a point of view. Of course, mine is, a fund is not a creative role. I mean, we manage funds, but it's also important to have a man's point of view, because I agree with you that I think, the way forward is a common way. So, I mean, it's important that everybody is on board, and that's why I insisted on having, figures, facts. Not that we can do as much, she was saying, I like doing things. I wish I could do more. But I mean, the context is not always conducive to change, given the framework I was trying to present. But I would like also to disagree when I understood you said, the recommendation is useless. Maybe you went a little bit too far saying that, because from my point of view, it's absolutely not useless. It's not as important as a binding legal instrument, but actually that helps things change. And the fact, I know that, for example, the recommendation by the Committee of Ministers was looked at and discussed in Mexico, for example, which has nothing to do with the Council of Europe. And that's actually, that's very important. And on a practical level, I know that financial institutions in some member states of Eurimages use the ranking of female-male roles to assess projects and then to decide, if there can be a reduction in the cost of credit when they fund producers. I'm talking about banking institutions, not public funds. But that allows producers to get cheaper credit on their work. So from that point of view, I was in touch with them to say, how can we translate that in something that can be made operational in order to assess automatically the credit risk and to give a premium. That's the way banks think and work, but it's the equivalent, I think, of saying we increase to 75% or we set aside a percentage of funds for women producers. For them, it's just to say we lower the cost of credit for projects where women are represented above a certain threshold. So I insist, it's not useless. It's a way to start thinking, and also having bankers who are there to make money. I mean, that's their business, looking at these things and to include these kind of considerations in their assessment of credit. They will keep making money, but I mean, if they fund more projects by women, there will be more films by women. So from my point of view, it's a positive change. As to produce more, binding legal instruments, legal things, from my point of view, it's I have a very biased perspective, if you wish, which is the international one. Nowadays, it's very difficult to get agreement, even among similar countries. I think it's not in l'air du temps. It's not the right time. We should insist it's important, but unfortunately, I think it's more important, as you said. I think the point you made that I found very interesting, to say, what we did in Spain should be made known. That's actually what we did. Best practices. That's when we started awareness raising throughout Europe. Meaning from the Caucasus to the Balkans to Italy to Northern Europe. The idea was to say what was made in Sweden at that time, the pioneer in this field. And I think it's very important if more examples can be made, examples to which other people can relate. And I think, that there can be, I'm not saying a bandwagon effect, but some emulation there. And I think it's very important.
Thank you. Alexia?
Muy interesante.
It's very interesting to reflect upon what we could do to have men really pleased to work with women and have more women films. I think those points that are awarded to give incentives to films with women in positions of responsibility, all that lead producers to find movies and movies that are made by women. I think that we have more allies in the media if we write about movies done by women, not writing about we're doing always the same movie, maybe more female-like movies, but then maybe we've spent our lives watching movies about friends going to football matches. So some balance is needed because we need the visibility. We need these great movies to reach out to the people. We don't want these movies to stay in niches for people who like European movies. We should make these movies reach out, not like Barbie obviously, but if we want the movies to reach out to young people, we need to talk to the young people where they are. I'm specifically interested in the contact with the new audiences, how to reach them, see if they will be interested in the movies as we do them, with them being used to TikTok and social networks and other types of content. I'm concerned about that. The other topic is that it's very interesting to see how there are more and more women playing in all areas. There was a movie like Titan, which was a Titan, that was a revolution. It's the first time that a woman won the Cannes Award. It had a gender touch. The movie was quite not aggressive. How could I define it? It was quite groundbreaking, really, especially coming from a woman filmmaker. But these movies are being accepted, and we are seeing it. Greta Gerwig, who was the muse of Bammelkot, and now there is a Barbie movie with this. It is a blockbuster, and a lot of people were so annoyed that it was men and women dressed in pink going to see the movie in the theaters. I thought it was an amazing experiment. So many people, men and women, making something special of going to see the movie. People were angry about that, but people are not angry if you wear the uniform of your football match. People wear that to go and watch and see their football team. So this is, I think, a revolution, and I think that little by little we will have more Wonder Woman, more Oscars given to movies like No Man's Land, more movies like Barbie and Alcaraz and Horno, and I hope all these movies will reach the audiences. I don't know, we have a little time left, but maybe someone would like to ask a question from the audience. Hello, thanks CIMA for the pressure, and thanks for collecting the baton and changing the things. I think that you've not mentioned the basis, the foundation. I think that, thanks to these cases of success, young women are seeing this and are opting for studying maybe filmmaking or production. We're seeing this more and more in schools. The number of women in the schools, in cinema schools, is growing. So this is not just the women that are already there, but all this foundation that is being laid, being created of women that will be figures in 10, 15 years as well. I wanted to point that out because I don't think it's been mentioned. Yes, Yes, because then there are benchmarks and benchmarks and benchmarks, and that is the point. Any more questions?
Do you work at university? You teach? Okay, because whenever we teach young women, we should also prepare them for the real life after academy, you know. I have a lot of women who come to my festivals who are in their 30s, maybe have 1 or 2 children. They said, just after graduation, I would never have submitted my film to your festival because I didn't see myself as disadvantaged by any means. But then, yeah, you start a family or you start your career and then you start to see, you know, how hard it is. So we need to prepare our female and male students for real life more.
Thank you. Un inciso quiero hacer.
I would like to add something here. EWA Network study published in 2016, it said that half of the graduated students were women, but so over half of the graduated people, but then deep down 1 out of 5 movies were made by women. So there was a problem in the industry. There were many doors, and the male students had less difficulties. In the CAM, in the cinema school, there was 1 year when there were only men wanting to be accepted. So women thought that it would be better maybe to do other, I don't know, costume or other areas, but with all these benchmarks, there will be more women wanting to study filmmaking. I know that this is an example of that year. No women applied. Yeah, it's like when you used to go to the doctor and you never saw a woman doctor, and now the practices are full of women. So women are thinking, I can move from being a nurse to being a doctor. So all sectors are really moving forward, and this is part of the training. It's part of the education at home. It's part of the roles you see in your life. Thanks very much. I would like to ask all the panelists if, in view of the success of these policies, do you know any other initiative that has worked with other quotas? Maybe not gender-based, but for creators that belong to other races, other ethnicities. Are there any other initiatives, any other types of support for other types of creators who belong to other groups to have the opportunity to join the world of cinema? This is a bit of an anti-capitalism narrative, but do you know any examples in any other countries, for example? Anything you know that is happening in this respect? UK is doing an amazing work in that respect. I think in Europe they are really at the forefront. They have taken that on board and they're working on that. It would be racist in some countries. The legislation does not allow that on grounds of racism. There may be programs that give incentives to underrepresented groups or minorities that are not represented enough, but as far as I know, in France, for example, there cannot be any specific financial support for other ethnicities or something like that. I would like to use this opportunity. I'm not closing the panel, but this is not a final point. But I would like to say that with respect to what Bea said about Barbie, tomorrow at 8:30, if you're interested in the Barbie topic, there is a round table proposed by the Pedro Cerolo Foundation which is called Barbie and Ken, Female Cinema and Psychoanalysis, with Eva Hernández, the university teacher from the Complutense University of Madrid, Marta Pérez Adrover, psychoanalyst, and Amalia Cáceres, an expert on comparative literature. This is a project this program has been organized between the Cine por Mujeres Festival of Madrid, Pedro Cerolo Foundation, and I invite you to participate in this table, because I do believe that the Barbie movie will represent a landmark, a turning point before and after in this type of study. I just wanted to mention that. Please continue.
It's just, because examples was asked about other countries. Within the UK does not belong to Eurimages, but definitely the country where these issues have been dealt more extensively is Canada. We are looking at their experience. They have a black screen, they have indigenous screen, they have programs for minorities in terms of Nordic populations. I was in Toronto in a round table with people from minorities in Canada, and actually they're very advanced. We are trying now to share this experience with other member states within Eurimages to see what could be actually done at our level. But as mentioned, these discussions are just starting. And of course, legislation, as mentioned, France is a very difficult country. When you're French, you're French. That's that's the way they present things. It's in their tradition, it's in their culture, so it's very difficult. It's very interesting to listen to discussions between Canadians and French people in that regard. But for the time being, they have not produced results at Eurimages. But if you look at Canada, I think, it's also a country where they have established examples I insist, we had contacts, we had meetings with the Black Screen Canada, Indigenous Screen Canada. It's really a country where these issues have been dealt with fairly.
En Europa hay, pero yo creo que no son a nivel nacional.
There are examples in Europe, but not at national level. I think it's more for foundations, institutions that may launch special programs to take on board minorities or underrepresented groups, but at regional level, at national level, that is difficult. Are there any other questions? Well, let me do some propaganda. Let me say that there are groups from migrants, from disabled persons, persons with functional disabilities is the phrase that is used now, because they're realizing that, but for women, but because they're realizing that not all women have the same problems. So I imagine they will begin to think of initiatives to undertake all this. There is also a working group for LGBTI. So we will be producing initiatives, and I imagine that the people who are experiencing all these problems we'll try to bring it to the law at some point, but we need to analyze, we need to study, we need to produce reports, and we need to see what happens. Carlota, I'm sorry, but that's my field. I just wanted to say thank you to Alexia, thank you Enrico, thanks Maxa, and thanks Beatriz, because it's been extremely interesting. I have learned a lot myself, indeed, so thank you. I just wanted to say thank you to the five of you. Thanks, Cristina, for your great moderating job. It's been fascinating. I think it's very important to hold these types of tables, to have these joint reflections, because there are many diverse experiences, there are lessons to be learned by everybody. And my conclusion from this reflection, that I hope has inspired you as much as it has inspired me, is that aside from what Ana Serna said about telling stories, I think that Spain has demonstrated that we need to legislate. And I wanted to take advantage of this microphone in order to thank Cristina Andreu on behalf of all the women in the audiovisual world, and Beatriz Navas, because you've done work that has changed the landscape of women in the audiovisual industry. So thanks very much.